Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about how to run a fat loss phase. So when you're starting off and you set the goal that, hey, I've got enough muscle mass for now, or maybe before I even start putting on muscle, I want to trim some fat off. And you can run a cut whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, depending on your goals and your starting body weight. So the way I would kick it off is, what I generally like to do, I'll take a calculator and say your body weight's 200 pounds. And based off your activity level, what I would do is, if you have a low activity level, times your body weight by 13. And if you have a moderate activity level, times it by 14. And if you have a high activity level, times it by 15. Now, what those activity levels can look like, say you have a sedentary job and you maybe estimate around 5,000 to 6,000 steps a day, I would consider that a low activity level. A moderate activity level, I would say maybe you weight train 4 to 5 times a week and you're averaging about 8,000 steps a day. A high activity level, I would add in weight training 5-6 days a week, getting at least 3 HIIT cardio sessions in per week and averaging anywhere from 10 to 15,000 steps a day. And this will give you a rough estimate of your caloric needs. But everyone's individual metabolic rate, meaning the calories you burn at rest, will be individual to you. So you can use this calculator to get in the range of where you need to be and then monitor your body weight. So let's say you're on the calculator and it says, hey, I need to eat 3,000 calories a day. And what I would recommend doing, get on the scale fasted in the morning after using the bathroom, having no water, and weigh yourself and say you weigh 200 pounds. And your goal is to lose 1 pound a week. So you want to be in a 500 calorie deficit. What that means is, say your starting maintenance weight for your caloric demands is 3,000 calories. You would subtract that by 500, and that'll give you 2,500 calories. And a 500 calorie deficit will give you 1 pound of fat loss per week. So what I would do is, say you're running 2,500 calories for the week, and then you come the next week and you're down a pound, you're in the range you need to be. Let's say you're down half a pound. That means you're in a 250 calorie deficit, and the calculator wasn't as accurate because it wasn't going based off your individual circumstances. So that would mean that your actual baseline maintenance is roughly 2,850 calories a day. And to achieve that 1 pound of fat loss, you would need to subtract that number by 500. So the ultimate way to know your caloric maintenance is by tracking and monitoring body weight. And once you got your number, you want to go based off how high body fat you actually have. So what I usually recommend is, anyone that's above 20% body fat, we can go ahead and lose 1% of body weight per week. Meaning if you're 200 pounds, you can lose 2 pounds a week. Now, as you taper down to, let's say, 185, I would shoot for no more than 1.8 pounds a week. But a 2 pound a week fat loss rate is a pretty steep deficit. So if a 500 calorie deficit only gives us 1 pound of fat loss, what does that mean? That means we have to be in 1,000 caloric deficit per day to achieve 2 pounds of actual fat loss. So, I mean, I would recommend it just because you'll get quicker results. But if it's not sustainable for your lifestyle, we can just run the 1 pound of fat loss. It's just going to take longer to get to your goal, right? Now, when you're under 20% body fat, I would consider that pretty lean. So no matter your body weight, I would recommend anywhere from half a pound to 1 pound per week of fat loss. Now you can do more. I mean, I've seen people, they've done pretty aggressive diets like Lyle McDonald, and I mean, from what I can see, they kept most of their muscle mass. But if you're going to achieve that fat loss and then binge eat and gain it all back, it didn't serve you any good, really, did it? So once you got your caloric number and your deficit, once you've set that deficit up, then we're going to go to your macros. So with your macros, I would recommend anywhere from 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein, meaning if you weigh 200 pounds, you want to be doing about 200 grams of protein per day. Now, if you want that lower end of 0.7, that's fine, but during a cut, just to be safe, if you're trying to keep all your muscle mass, I would recommend 1 gram per pound, right? So now we got our protein set, right? So 1 gram per pound of body weight, 500 calorie deficit for 1 pound a week of fat loss. Once we've got that, then we're going to look at our other macronutrients. So based off the studies, we've seen a sustainable must-get minimum for fat is about 30 grams. I mean, you could go down to the lower end of 20 grams if you're just talking about just enough to keep my hormones great. But me, I recommend at least 30 grams, especially for males who are trying to optimize not only their muscle retention, but their health. And women, I wouldn't go any lower than 40 grams because your hormone levels are critical and you can have a lot more faster disturbances in fat loss hormonally and health-wise, okay? So we got our fat set. I mean, that fat, it can trend higher if you want it to. And with carbs are not necessary, but in terms of energy and training in the gym, I do find it to be the best energy output. So once you have your protein and your fat calories accounted for, just fill the rest in with carbs. I mean, if you want to do keto and do low carb, that's fine. Just make sure you're eating enough fat to sustain your training. And now, speaking of training, let's get to training. So with training, what I would recommend if you want to do the bare minimum to keep your muscle mass during a fat loss phase, I would say cut your volume down to 1/3 of what you're doing now and maintain intensity. And what that means is, especially if you're a beginner, volume is the amount of sets you're doing per week. So if you're a beginner, you don't even have a set range. So I would just recommend doing 2 sets per week per muscle group. So let's say you did flat barbell bench and you got that for 135 for a set of 10 and you got to failure. And failure means intensity. So let's say you went to failure 1 rep in reserve. Intensity is how close you get to failure, the amount of weight that you're using, right? So once you're training intensely, we've seen, you can maintain muscle mass and make gains off 4 sets for gains, 2 sets for maintenance. So yeah, as a beginner, I would just do 2 sets for a cut. Me, myself, I've been lifting for 3 years. I only do 2 sets per muscle group on a cut, and I maintain all my muscle mass that way. As long as you're training intense and taking most sets and definitely the last set to failure. And you can run that however you want to. If you want to be in the gym 5-6 days a week, that's fine. Just don't let your recovery suffer for it. But me personally, I like to do full body 1 day a week. That way I can just keep myself distracted during a fat loss phase. I only have that 1 hard day in the gym, and then the rest of the time I'm trying to keep myself busy so I'm not focusing on the fact that I'm hungry. And that's another thing, while you're running this cut, expect to be hungry. And definitely do not overlook weight training, because weight training is the key to keeping your muscle mass and protein. It works together. And You want to keep your muscle mass, because if you're not weight training, let's say you lost 10 pounds and you didn't weight train, probably about 30 to 40% of that, especially if the deficit was steep, like a pound a week, 30 or 40% of that could come from muscle mass, guys. And that's not the look we're going for. You don't want to lose 30 pounds and then a third of it be muscle. You're going to not have or achieve that look that you wanted. You're going to look soft and fragile, and you're going to get weaker, and you're actually going to be able to eat less food because you lost muscle. So we have our macros, our caloric needs, our weight training, and the fourth thing I want to touch on is sleep. Now, I know most of y'all have jobs or school schedules, but I would recommend at least getting 6 hours of sleep per night. I know for some people that's not sustainable, but just try and prioritize sleep the most you can, because this is going to be key for fat loss and recovery. And all four of those things work together. But if you can achieve that and stick to this for your set amount of time, then guys, you're gonna achieve your goals. But another thing I want to touch on, so there's no confusion, as you lose weight, your caloric maintenance will change. So let's say your starting body weight was 2850, right, for your calories. And let's say you went from being a 200-pound male to a 170-pound male. Your caloric maintenance might get substantially lower. So let's say you're not losing weight after that. Say you've set your 500 calorie deficit to 2350 and you're not losing weight anymore. That's because you're at your baseline maintenance level now. So what that means is we have a choice. We can either keep losing 1 pound of fat and take another 500 calories off of our current maintenance, or we can lose half a pound of fat per week and just do a 250 calorie deficit per day. And what that could look like is, say you wanted to do a 200 calorie deficit and add another 1,000 steps. Generally, what I like to say is per 1,000 steps you take is an extra 35 calorie deficit. So let's say we set our calories to a 200 calorie deficit and we add 1,000 steps of cardio. That will get you roughly where you need to be for a half pound of fat loss per week. Or you could just run it straight on the diet because you don't have time for the steps. That's totally okay too. But I just wanted to touch on that and clarify on that, because I don't want you getting confused of like, okay, my calories are where they need to be, but my weight loss has plateaued or come to an abrupt stop. So yes, as you lose weight, your caloric needs will change and they will lower. So expect to drop calories, and calories can get pretty low. And I will make another video this week about what to do after you've hit your goal weight. And I'll touch on that later. That's it for this one, guys. See ya.